everybody, Kai here again, want to pop in and chat. Something, since I've been so busy with school and everything that has come up, is something in my psychology class which I want to talk about. Maybe a little bit on a personal level, but, in general. We have been talking about mental illness. That's been the next chapter we've been covering in class. And the idea that was presented the other day was that of labels. And not just your general stereotype labels, but that of mental illnesses like OCD, ADHD, depression, and that makes me think of an appointment I had recently with my therapist. There's a big difference, and I don't think I ever really considered it until I had class and things like that, between having an issue and being that issue. Now that I think back about it, if we had that kind of mindset, between me and my fellow classmates when we were quite younger, middle school and things like that, we would have developed quite differently. There's a big difference between being depressed and having depression. I've always known I've been a person who has depression, but I've never viewed myself as being depressed. That can be, probably a better example if you look at it as far as, diabetes goes. There's a big difference between I am diabetic and I have diabetes. One thing I think is that there's a big change in the ownership. There's the ownership of being connected with it versus having it. When it's labeled in with you and who you are, that's a self-identifying piece of you that is hard to pull apart from your personality. I was just talking about this the other day, that there's a big difference between how you are and how people conceive you. I have a lot of misconceptions about me, and it's always happened. I've always heard a lot of different comments as far as oh, you don't look well, you look depressed, things like that. And, in certain circumstances, it was actually quite the opposite, where I'd be really happy, really enjoy myself, but it was that misconception. And that kind of thing happens every time, but it can be a little confusing. I think it's just something that's really interesting, and not that I'm trying to start a revolution or anything like that, but I think it'd be a good idea for people to have the chance to think about it. The difference between owning and being. Because just in the past week, it's made a big difference to me thinking of, how that concept works in my general life and how it's applied to me, through growing up and things like that. And I don't think it necessarily clumps together with stereotypes, but I think it can fall along the same pattern. Not only can a person identify as something, but a misconception can always be built, and a stereotype's built around that. And I've always been a big advocate for, not using stereotypes. If you identify as something, I think that's perfectly fine. If you feel comfortable with it and you feel it's essential to identify as something, there's nothing wrong with it, as long as you feel empowered by it. But as far as someone else applying a definition to you, that's something I've never been okay with. I've always had issues with that, through growing up and things like that. That's caused a lot of major concerns. And there's just this idea that if we can just kind of shift just a little bit about how we think about that, maybe we can start erasing some of these misconceptions, we can start erasing some of these stereotypes and things like that. It can no longer be that person is, it's more this person has. And rather it being something, it's something that can be identified and helped and solved or managed. And that's a big thing. Excuse me. Apparently heavy topics make me have a little gas. I'm joking, that's joking. But yeah, it's just kind of an interesting concept, compared to my psychology class, my therapy that I go through and things like that. Something I kind of want to put out there. I don't know if anyone else has experienced anything similar. Something that has occurred to me recently is I reconnected with a couple of people from high school, and these people I literally have been through every step of school with, except for college. All three of us went to different colleges. And it's one of those things where they turned out differently than what I had expected. You know, during our time being schoolmates together, I would have never expected for them to be a certain way or anything like that. And now that they have reconnected and we're in these adult stages of our lives and things like that, it's interesting. You know, it's almost like the tables flipped kind of a thing. But, you know, it was one of those situations I thought of as far as the stereotypes and the labels go. Because if they would have had identified as that particular, you know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, it would have been completely different than when they do it now. And, you know, if they do it now, that's all good. I think that there's more maturity that's occurred, you know, at the current moment where people can handle it than they would have had a few years back. So, I mean, there's a lot of maturity that goes along with this concept and things like that, too. You know, I did used to be a former high school student, things like, not high school student, I was a former high school student, but I mean former high school tutor and middle school tutor. One of my big advocates that I've always been, you know, besides against suicide, is self-help and people getting the help that they need. Something like this, you know, if you can just start injecting it, you know, into our brothers or sisters, our little cousins, you know, probably have like 20 cousins under the age of 10 or something right now. Big family. You know, your best friends, brothers and sisters, your parents or things like that. Just this little shift in thought and concept and the way that we perceive things can make a huge difference in somebody's life. You know, it's going to take a while for that idea to kind of settle in people. And of course, people develop different ways and things like that. But I think if it's honestly considered, it really might help. So, you know, I hope to empower you guys, anyone watching this, you know, let yourself take control of this. Don't let it take control of you. Don't let yourself be something. Allow yourself to have something. That way you can manage it. You can cope with it. And you can cure it if need be or if can be. Don't let it be you. Just happen to have it. You know, just happen to have something and know for a fact it won't control your life or you won't become it. You know, just that little shift. I hope that, you know, everyone else can kind of go out and push this idea. And, you know, if this idea kind of really goes forward and things like that, that people can start having healthier lives and things like that and have a healthier image of themselves. So, anyways, that's going to be off. I'm going to cut myself off here. It's getting a little bit long-winded. Anyways, I will be back here shortly. I do have a paper to write for school, which I'm going to be focusing on. But hopefully in the next 2 weeks or so, I'll be posting another video to talk. Otherwise, you can also find me down below in the description, elsewhere online, where I'll usually be updating. Otherwise, have fun, and be happy, everybody. Bye.